Good morning, Michigan. A very pleasant hump day Wednesday to you. It's Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan. Interesting guest list this morning includes Kip Miller, former NHL player, and played for Michigan State. On the Red Wings, are they going to be able to bounce back? They're going to play tonight against the San Jose Sharks. It'll be in Detroit, but in this playoff series, they're already down 2-0. Can they bounce back? And it's Kip Miller's brother, isn't it? Drew Miller, that's on the Red Wings, and so we'll talk with Kip, see what he thinks. Carla Ord will be here. Now, Carla Ord from Grand Rapids has got a company called Blue Monkey Adventures, and she took some people to London to be there, not at the wedding, but for the royal wedding. And sure enough, on Friday night, I was watching Dateline NBC, and there she was, Carla and her husband, right there on Dateline NBC being interviewed about how the wedding went, and she was right in the middle of the crowd, and they were following her with cameras, so she brought a little attention to Grand Rapids, Michigan. We'll bring a little attention to her this morning. Also, later in the program, Joe Montana, the former NFL quarterback. Remember, he won his Super Bowl, first one, right here in Detroit at the Pontiac Silverdome here in Michigan. So we'll talk with him about that memory and what else is going on in Joe Cool's life. That's what they call him. Was he here too? I want to ask him at the Michigan State Notre Dame game last year because his son played for Notre Dame. Was he here when Mark D'Antonio pulled that fake field goal and the Spartans beat Notre Dame in overtime? I want to ask him about that because I know he went to a lot of Notre Dame games. They always would show him on the sideline on TV. United States Senator Carl Levin will be here. He's the chair of the Armed Services Committee, isn't he? Senate Armed Services Committee. And obviously, we got a lot to talk to him about when it comes to bin Laden and what is going on and what about the military attack. Now, some of the details are changing. What really happened and what did Pakistan know and not know? Were they harboring Osama bin Laden? Those are some of the questions we'll talk with Senator Levin about this morning. So stay tuned for that. It's 8 minutes after the hour right now. Michael Patrick Shields, heard all across the state of Michigan. Gas prices have reached a new average record high across the state of Michigan. The cost for a gallon of regular unleaded hit $4.21 yesterday. The statewide figure is $4.20, 22 cents. Wow. $4.22 is the average. That means some of the gas prices are higher than that. Nancy Kane with AAA says it's expected that the prices are very near at last their ceiling.
The sticker shock price was $4, and we've passed that mark. So do we think it'll get to $5? Hopefully not.
Yeah, well, Nancy Kane says the statewide average for gas prices might, though, increase during the summer holidays like Memorial Day.
Right now, we're at $4.22. With Memorial Day weekend a few weeks away, it's likely that prices may go up a little bit.
The cheapest gas in the state on average can be found in Flint and Traverse City and Saginaw. So our lucky listeners in Traverse City and Saginaw, you're getting the cheapest gas in the state. Congratulations to you. They're busy in New York City because since bin Laden has been killed, there's been a spike in suspicious packages reports. Now, I don't think the packages necessarily lead to anything, but people are a little more nervous about what's going on. They're a little more attentive because, well, after all, we've been told, to be careful, to be more observant. So this year, if you can imagine, 2,775 packages have been reported as suspicious. That's more than last year by far through the same period. That's about 400 more packages. So New Yorkers are a little bit nervous, and why wouldn't they be? At least they're observant. They're doing what they're asked to do. Could Michigan be a terror target? Well, we were, I suppose, when that Northwest flight was coming in on Christmas Day and the fellow tried to blow up his underwear. But there's a Wayne State professor, Richard Chasdy, who's authored a book called Counter-Terror Offensive for the Ghost War World. And he says that bin Laden laid the groundwork for mythical status after his death. And he's got a message that's going to be coming out soon. And he says when you think about Al-Qaeda hitting America and the economic machine, you might think about Wall Street. But what about the big three? Yeah. He said what happened in Japan, the earthquake and the tsunamis that had a big impact on the auto industry, that could serve as a precursor of what could happen here if they had a well-coordinated attack. And therefore, Detroit is a rich and vulnerable target. He says in death, bin Laden is going to assume a status in life that he was not able to achieve. Attack on Washington, D.C., New York, and Detroit really is the most next logical target. That's what the Wayne State professor says. But over at the University of Michigan, there's a history professor called Juan Coles, and he actually testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and he said the Muslim world was already beginning to see bin Laden as a dinosaur. So we'll ask Senator Levin about this later, too, when we talk with him. White House still trying to decide whether releasing bin Laden's body is a good thing to do. The Obama administration debating it. It's gruesome images, apparently, of bin Laden's corpse. And they're trying to demonstrate to the world that he's dead, but they don't want to provoke further anti-U.S. sentiment. Do you want to see a photo of bin Laden with a big hole right between his eyes? That's what you'll see. The CIA director, Leon Panetta, said that a photograph would be released, but they're trying to figure out the best way to do it. There have been fakes that have gone out, but there are people who think it would be disrespectful and it would intend to humiliate some people, Muslims, I presume. So do we put the picture out or not? The President of the United States is going to be speaking at Ground Zero, and they've already decided he's going to do that. Then they decided, hey, maybe we should invite George W. Bush. So they did. The White House invited George W. Bush to be with President Obama at Ground Zero on Thursday, and he said, no, thank you. President Bush said, I appreciate the offer, but no thanks. And his spokesperson said that he wants to remain out of the spotlight. He's celebrating with Americans the important victory in the war on terror, but he won't be there. Obama, who sharply criticized Bush for neglecting the hunt on bin Laden by invading Iraq, made the offer to Bush just shortly after he decided about his New York trip, according to people familiar. So the president will go alone to the World Trade Center to mark the killing of Osama bin Laden, and that'll be on Thursday, but it won't be with President Bush, who will remain out of the spotlight. I don't know, maybe he doesn't like the way that President Obama has sort of insinuated that he didn't do all he could to capture bin Laden. Maybe he didn't like being invited late to the party. Maybe he just doesn't want to do it. White House, by the way, standing by Pakistan. The spokesman there, Jay Carney, says Pakistan remains a very important partner, but a lot of people are having serious questions about why Pakistani authorities didn't know bin Laden was living in the compound so close to the capital for several years. How could they not know that? Well, we'll ask Senator Levin when we talk with him coming up shortly. And Rick Santorum is going to throw his hat into the presidential race. He's a former Pennsylvania senator, a Republican, so he'll take part in that first GOP presidential debate. That'll be Thursday in Greenville. You'll have Minnesota Governor Tim Pawlenty, Ron Paul, the Texas congressman, and New Mexico Governor Gary Johnson, used to be the governor. They'll all be debating on Thursday.